Well, the inevitably unavoidable happened to the car finally. The ignition dead seized. So, what you're looking at here is the remnants of the original ignition to this body. I had a lot of issues getting this out. It actually caused a no-start condition. It almost stranded me at a gas station the last time I drove the car, which has actually only been once since the steering wheel spokes have been installed. So this little, I guess, hinged release pin right here, which normally would stick up above the ignition barrel housing, which locks it into the column itself, that dead seized, which sucked. And the ignition itself had jammed due to a wearing ramp at the back. So I had no choice but to drill it out. So if anybody was ever curious, this is what the remnants of a drilled GTO ignition looks like. If you haven't already done the updated lock cylinder itself, it's pretty cake to do as long as that pin isn't jammed. Worst comes to worst, as long as you've got a current registration card and a form of ID that you can take into a locksmith, and as long as they have access to a Mercedes style shank, the actual blade itself, which is what these cars call for, which is something I learned today from a local locksmith. The one locksmith in a town of 150,000 people that can actually cut a key for these damn cars, then you should be able to get a new lock cylinder and a new tumbler made if you are stuck in the position where you have to drill it out and basically destroy all of the keying information or the actual grind of the, not the grind of the key, but the order in which the tumblers are seated into it. I mean, and here's pretty much the only remnants left that aren't just completely metal chips of what the inside of the tumbler itself looks like. Which kind of sucked, but thankfully I got parts here pretty quick. I know Maverick Man Carbon, he sells a very reasonably priced whole kit that's like $65 at the time of this filming, and that includes a new lock cylinder, tumbler, keys, springs, retention pins, and everything for it. So you take it to a locksmith, they'll put it together for you if you don't feel comfortable doing something like that yourself, and then you'll have a whole new ignition, which is honestly much cheaper than having to both pay a locksmith and then spending about $75 in 3 different size drill bits going all the way up to just about an inch bit. I think this is a 3/4 in order to drill enough of the ignition out, and then having to break this pin, so having to take a hammer and a pick, breaking the pick, which sucks, breaking tools, it always does. Unfortunately, there is no way around this. It will inevitably happen to every GTO. I've seen it happen on cars with 5,000 miles. I've seen it happen on cars with 250,000 miles. But after just being patient for a little bit and a little bit of Google foo, it really wasn't all that difficult. It was mostly just a lot of drilling, a lot of holding the Milwaukee vacuum over here to suck up as many of the metal chips as I could. And unfortunately, you can see there's still some of them over there. The whole floorboard over here, part of the seat was covered with it. So it was a very ginger, delicate operation to try and get everything drilled out as much as I could, but thankfully I was able to save the original column to this car. Putting in a steering column in these isn't terribly difficult. It just wasn't something that I wanted to do at this point in time. But it still sucks that that happened, since I've literally driven the car once since the steering wheel spokes got put in. I don't know, it must have been the shock of me having to physically break the bolt loose that holds the steering wheel onto the column that must have caused the tumblers to just not do their thing and cause the key to seize, or the ignition to seize, along with the worn ramp on the lock cylinder. But hopefully this fixes the issue. I took the time, also pulled the glove box, so I'm finally having a glove box key made too, even though it's not really vital. It was something that originally came with these cars that I actually never had. Aside from that, it's really just been work, honestly. I've had maybe 4 hours total to get to this thing in the past maybe 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, with the exception of the steering wheel spokes. And even then, I did that dead tired after a really long day at work. Harvest is in full swing, so we've been doing 80, 90 hour plus weeks. So, I mean, hell, the last time I cleaned the engine bay was maybe a month ago. And generally, this catch can, the filter, doesn't do the absolute best job. And even then, there's really no oil residue which usually happens, especially at high RPM or generally anywhere over 5,000 RPM, and I drain that fairly regularly, so that's usually not an issue. But no, the paychecks have been great. Unfortunately, the taxes suck, thanks Illinois. But I ordered a set of rear control arm bushings. I was originally going to do a set of white line eccentric bushings to try and adjust the camber, but there's really not a whole lot of room camber-wise anyways, and the car will be lowered a little bit more this winter, hopefully, with the new G-Force coilover setup and the QA1 coilovers themselves on it. So I really don't think a whole lot of camber adjustability would really help me. I'm going to try the standard polyurethane black white line bushings and see where that puts me, fitment wise, if it changes the fitment at all. Since pretty much the only bushings original in this car are in fact the lower control arm bushings in the rear. Everything else has been updated or replaced over the past 3 or 4 years. So yeah, and then hopefully within the next month or so, as long as harvest keeps rocking like it is right now, I'll order the pulley setup, and then I'll just keep stashing money away like I have on the side for the rear CCW, so I can send those down to Texas to a company to get refinished to my liking and make sure everything's kosher with those. And then, work will begin this winter, so I guess I'll see everybody then, since I probably won't have any more time to do anything with this except for maybe move it sometime this month to the warehouse until probably early next year.